Welcome back to Real One Garage Podcast. I'm your host Jamal, and this is the podcast where we keep it real and keep it relatable. Today, I have a guest. I told you guys I would. A special guest, actually. We've been talking for a long time and trying to set up an appropriate time, actually, so that we could have a good chat and really get into the nitty gritty of all automotive and even JDM. I have Jesse from White Pine Welding. He is a bespoke fabricator that is in the GTA and basically would be able to assist you with any of your fabrication needs for any of your motorsport interests or anything from drifting to grip racing. But I'm going to let him describe himself because he has a lot to chat about and I want to really get into it. But how we connected actually is we have a mutual friend who's by the name of Kevin who connected us because of course, what do you think it is? GTRs. GTRs is what usually connects everyone these days. Well, cars, but GTRs especially for us. But yeah, that's how I discovered his work on Instagram. I've been following him for quite a long time. And I'm always interested in reacting to any of the amazing work that he does on any of the cars and any of the work that he's doing for his customers. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Jesse.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me.
My
Yeah, I
pleasure.
appreciate that.
My pleasure. So let's just jump right into it. Give us a quick intro. Who is Jesse? What is White Pine Welding all about?
White Pine Welding is, I guess, a newer thing for me. Like I started this late in life, but I'm not a stranger to cars and especially welding now. I've been doing it in some shape or form since I was a teenager. And we'll touch on that and some of the stories around the cars and stuff that first got me into this. Yeah, the whole white pine welding thing was an evolution. It always is, right? But I was able to take a background of a few corporate gigs that shaped my different experiences, mostly automotive related and manufacturing and testing and automation. So I was good on tools, and it was the car stuff that got me into welding actually. But yeah, we'll get into that too. But that's how the business came to be. It went from just working on the side and doing side gigs after hours to, something where I was able to turn into a full-time gig. And there's a bit of a story there. Usually there's something that, you need to shit or get off the pot. And usually there's a life story to it. And for me, there was a bit of a kick. And I'm glad it happened. So yeah, here we are.
Okay, that's awesome, man. Um, I don't like everyone goes through their struggles in life, but sometimes is lucky enough to find their place, their comfort spot where they say, I like doing this, and I could make something out of it. And I'm guessing that's
Yeah.
kind of a simplistic paraphrase of how you kind of got into it a bit.
It's really just a choice, man. Like, it is that easy. You read these, I don't know if you call them memes or stories that are like meant to motivate people and whatnot. And, it's really as simple as putting your mind to it and trying to let go of the fear, really.
Mm. Okay, yeah, I definitely understand that. I've tackled that a few times in my life.
Right.
So you went to school initially for like automotive technician, I guess?
Yeah, that's no, not a tech, but I actually took automotive product design, which is a mechanical engineering course at Georgian.
Okay.
And you get a co-op with that. So I got a little bit of work experience, and yeah, so it's not a surprise that I landed in something like automotive and manufacturing related. But I learned pretty quickly that I'm not the type to sit behind a computer all day and, do CAD or whatever. So, it kind of, yeah, it evolved from there, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is in that time when sorry, it was like an internship, so to speak, or an apprenticeship,
Co-op. Yeah.
co-op.
Co-op. Yeah.
Is that like when you started your like working on your welding skills?
No, the welding came, there's a bit of a story there. We can get into that if you want. Basically, I was into civics and stuff in through college, but it wasn't until I got a job on a race team, and we used to travel all over the states. It was a professional team. I mean, we weren't running Daytona prototypes or anything, but we toured with the Coney Challenge in 2008. The next year, it was called the Continental Challenge. They changed the series sponsor in 2009 and 2010, and so I really got exposed to racing. That's road course racing, right? It was an ST class car, Chevy Cobalts, the turbos. We had GM factory support. And the guy that ran the team that I worked for was this little German guy, and he was the president of the CASC, which is the Canadian Automobile Sport Club in Canada. He was the
Okay.
president.
Wow.
So yeah, he was really renowned. Like he really knew his stuff, and I learned a lot from him. And it was I don't even think it was, maybe it was the first day. The first race of the year is always Daytona. And I remember sitting on the pit cart and just saying to myself, like, I'm going to do this. I knew I wasn't going to be a professional race car driver. But so anyway, a bit of a long intro to how the welding thing happened, because I decided that I would buy a car that I could track. And
Okay.
that's kind of how the black S14 I sent you a picture of, that's kind of how that came up. I bought that car as a winter beater, and at the time it was $3,500. It was cheap. And shout out to my buddy Milan. He and I were like talking to each other on our lunch breaks, and he convinced me that a 240 was a good idea. So because I already had the car and it was winter driving it, working on this race team, exposed to racing, and then deciding, I want to get out there with my own car on the track. So yeah, there it is. That was while I was living in Newmarket. 95 LE leather, AC, sunroof, put some coilovers on it, put some Centrospect Brembos on the front, Hawk HP Plus pads. And my first track day, I was doing more laps than anybody else there at the biggest, supposedly scariest track. I'm proud of that. Like, not to brag, but like that was a core memory for me, and yeah, shout out to Milan. He was like what really drove me to purchase that 240. So it all started from there. Then I wanted to build a dedicated track car. So there is a picture in there that I sent you that has 3 S14s.
Yes.
I decided that, racing in time attack, your daily driver wasn't a smart move. And there's a driveway picture of 3 S14s. Yeah. So I was making decent money at the time. Like I said, these were corporate jobs, 9 to 5s or whatever. Imported this S14 swapped kooky LS power plant T50 out of Pennsylvania. And it was cheap. Like, I probably paid for the car what you would pay for a swap. Yeah, so it's the car on the left, that deep fuchsia pearl. That's a factory color. The color code is LS1, which happens to be the engine that was in it. So that was, I bought that car with the intentions of turning it into a dedicated track car. And that's where the welding thing. So kind of a long-winded answer, but like those experiences are what led me to wanting to learn welding, because it was the only thing on the car that I couldn't do to build a race car. And so I learned properly, like I went to school, I went back to college, and I did 3 separate courses at the Seneca program in King. They
Okay.
have a weld shop there. And it was more of like an interest initially. I had no intentions of, monetizing it in any way. It was just, I wanted to build my own car and not have to hire someone else to do the roll cage, which I had to because I made a goal for myself to get it done. So that was the only thing on that car that I didn't do, was do the roll cage. I stitch welded it, but not very well. I look back at it and I'm like, shit, that's kind of embarrassing. But so
Hey man, you
yeah,
did you took the leap to actually try. Not many people
yeah,
do that.
yeah. I think it's important too, if you're trying something new, I notice you're big on like trying to learn, and through your podcast, like sharing my experiences and lessons learned. I think it's important, like if you were to learn welding and you asked 10 different people about how to do this specific welding thing or whatever, you'd get 10 different answers. So like with stuff like that, I highly suggest you go to school, because they're going to share a standard of information from like the Canadian Welding Society or something like that. You're not learning from Joe and Bill and Bob. You know what I'm saying? You're learning like, yeah, I mean, they didn't teach me TIG welding, but those are the basics. Stick welding basics are like applicable to all types of welding. So it was good, like core knowledge. And I highly recommend people take that course or something like it, like take proper, education.
I appreciate that actually because I think I find a lot these days from a general perspective, not just only in the automotive industry or even in, let's just say, trades in general. Some people won't be so adamant about promoting going to school to learn these technical skills. Some people will say, "Hey, I did this myself. I didn't do that. I read a book and I just tried and tried and tried," which is it's great in its own right as well. But I always like to hear that, like, the devil's advocate approach and think, well, there has to be some benefits to going to school as well. And
Right.
obviously your testimony proves that it does work for you and you get
Yeah.
assurance. of the content that you're learning and the skills that you're learning based backed by people that are trained professionals, right?
The saying, like, I'm sure every trade says it, but like for a welder, I would say, everybody's a welder, it's like a running joke. Like everybody thinks they can weld when it comes time to welding, or everybody thinks they're a good plumber when it comes time to plumbing.
Mm,
But yeah, you can wing it and I'm sure you could get by. It depends what you're doing. But I just really liked it. So I just kept pushing it and thought, I grew up learning music. So all of that, like the rudimentary stuff is very important to learning something like masterfully.
that's very true because you have to know the basics to get into music in order to create something more intricate, more artistic, right? And honestly, I would attribute the skill of welding as an art form because
Yes.
when you kind of keep succeeding each level in terms of your technique and skills, you have to appreciate just the sheer artistic look of even just your weld points, whether you're welding stainless steel or titanium or aluminum, and it is not only just so strong, but it also looks good.
I think it's awesome that you recognize that because not too many, unless you're a welder, I wouldn't expect someone else to pick up on that. The artistic factor is something I think that speaks to me that I was lacking in those corporate jobs. And I'm not going to say it was the only thing. Obviously, I was the common denominator after 3, 4 jobs and leaving, roughly 3 to 5 years in, feeling like, what's wrong? Like I'm just not as motivated as I was initially and stuff. So like, yeah, this welding speaks to me in that way. Like if you're creating something out of nothing, you have a space of nothing, and you have to fill that with some functional thing. You kind of have to have an imagination and be able to transfer that to metal. And so, yeah, that's cool that you picked up on that. I appreciate that. Yeah,
My pleasure, man.
cool element.
You kind of touched on your exposure to cars and your friends kind of I believe kind of introduced you kind of to JDM culture. And I'm guessing when you eventually went to school was because you had those struggles. You wanted to do that fabrication yourself. So that was the a pivot point to overcoming your learning curves, right? In terms of
Yeah, I was done school, but yes, yeah. Um, this was once I was later, working out in industry where I met this guy. But yeah, yeah, essentially, yes.
okay. So yeah, so it kind of you kind of answered some of the questions I had here. So cars came
Okay.
first and then welding.
Yes.
The S14 was your first project car, right?
I mean, well, the Civics, I had a series of Civics before.
Civics. Okay.
They were all my first cars, so there's a bunch there. I think I labeled them for you like first, second, third, and fourth. I had four altogether,
Let's take
and
a look.
honestly, they just got better every time. I have a soft place in my heart for Civics. It started with the white one, the EG.
Were you alongside Toretto
So,
ripping off
do
DVDs?
you wanna hear a funny story? I got a good story with this car. I mean, back in those days, right, Fast and Furious 1 actually hadn't come out yet. I'm not
Okay.
even lying. Like, this car, so in my town, it was like this country town outside of Ottawa, right? And my dad, he drove me to the GTA to pick up this car that was, like, almost 4.5 hours, for us, where we were, 2 trips, and bought this car, and it was the first like it in that town. So, I'm not one for, like, flashy stuff. Like, maybe you can say you can look at my car and be like, "Yeah, you're full of shit," but I'm really not. Like, I don't buy them for attention. I buy them to enjoy them. And, I even then, like, yeah, it was nice for a minute that everybody was interested in it and looked at it, but then everybody was talking about it, and there was, like, this, I don't know, people say the dumbest shit, right? So, anyway, by the first break, I had moved the car instead of being in front of the high school to, like, around the corner. And we had a break later in the day, right? My buddy and I, shout out Wes, he was my high school buddy. We were going back to his place on break or something. And we walked out of the school and around the side, and there was the car and 2 cops hovering over it. And, I'm like 18 years, no, I'm like 17 maybe.
Hmm.
I'm 17 years old, and these guys are crawling over my car that I just bought. I just went through all this hassle of getting it on the road and stuff. And they were trying to convince me that it was stolen. And I'm like sharing all my paperwork because I just happened to have it. It was, fresh and in the glove box, used vehicle package and all that stuff, and insurance and ownership. Anyway, they made me pop the hood and they were checking the VIN number on the firewall and all this stuff. That was my first experience. And I knew like right then and there, I'm like, shit, this car is bringing the wrong kind of heat, you know? But it became a love hate thing, like to try and get through town without being bothered or something, you know?
I would be dishonest if I was saying that that car doesn't grab people's attention. It is
Yeah.
the front bumper alone.
And that was 2 months before, or 2 months or something before Fast and Furious came out. So like, I don't know, I just love those Civics, and they just happened to be in the very first movie too, with the Bomex, the black Civics that drive underneath the transport. That's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
essentially the same car, right?
yeah.
I love them. So yeah, that was a good core experience. So to answer your question, the Civics would have been my first project cars, really. Like I was modifying all of them. I actually worked in a stereo shop in my teens. So
Like,
when I had that first white Civic, I put a stereo in the trunk. This one was second car. So once I moved to college, I had sold the white one, bought this a couple years later, once I had a job here in Barrie and I can afford a car, pay some insurance, it had the Bomex kit. That was the same kit that came on those cars in Fast and Furious 1.
that's wild.
And it was a legit Bomex kit with they called the paint a candy apple chameleon green. And
It looks really good, actually, man. Even just like
yeah,
this, is probably like a old 10 megapixel camera, bro. Like this looks really good. You could tell it
yeah,
was
thank
done
you.
proper.
It was until, fiberglass just doesn't hold up too well. And yeah, somebody backed into it. I had really
Ah,
bad luck with that car. Somebody backed into both bumpers, and it's not like the kind of paint job you can match. So it was kind of a
both
wash.
bumpers, the front and back.
Yeah, two separate incidents, like really bad luck, man.
That's wild.
So yeah, then it was the red one. Anyway, so I went through that phase with the Civics, but yeah, I really didn't to get into like building, let's say, my own car. It was more or less like rims and tires and lowering springs and carbon fiber bits and pieces before.
Okay.
So now, I buy this car in Pennsylvania, the Deep Fuchsia Pearl S.
Sorry, I had to touch on this one because I really like the way this looks. I have to at least show this
Oh
picture.
yeah,
That
that's
this is a nice EK, man.
thank you. Yeah, that was in front of that's an EJ. I didn't
EK,
get the
sorry.
EK. EK was the hatch, right? But
EK is a hatch. Yeah, sorry. I
yeah,
saw the front half and I didn't even look at the
true.
fact that it was a coupe.
So
But
I was
yeah.
working in the States. One of my co-ops was in Detroit at a plant. And so I was making money on this co-op, and I'd be able to buy car parts down in the States when they were cheap and bring them back up and put them on my car. So the rims and tires, all the carbon bits all on that car were from when I was working down there.
No, man. It looks
The last Civic, they just kept getting better. The last one was really good. I bought it with and I made it more of like a go-kart. Put it on the rotas. It's the black hatch. That's an EK.
okay. Let me bring that up.
The B16 howled in that thing, man. It was really cool. Those password JDM carbon fiber, they call them the whale dick,
You know what's funny? I
the
literally
whale
seen
penis or
that in
something.
a
Yeah.
video just the other day, and they
Yeah.
said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
They
I've seen that.
howl. They howl. Once you hit VTEC, it just like the sound that it makes is incredible on that intake.
I think
So
loading 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
there you go. Yeah, that's it. Carbon fiber lip, some rotas, some lowering. That's, a couple race buckets. It was so fun. It was all like,
I love this Civic. Like
yeah,
this is my
yeah.
favorite Civic.
I wish I could have that car again for sure.
And so like this would technically because you know Civics better than me because I've never owned one. This is the EK4 because it's a left-hand drive, right?
Well, I actually don't know that. You're one step ahead of me there.
Oh,
I
okay.
only know
I
EK.
yeah, because I know the EK9 is the
Uh-huh.
actual
Type R.
Type R,
Right.
and it has some changes compared to like suspension and obviously the
Brakes.
B18.
Yeah.
Sorry, B16B,
B8.
B18C5. Yeah, so that'd be the difference. So this one, you said this came with a B6.
Yeah. B2. Yeah.
Okay, that was swapped in this car, or it came come
Yeah,
with
it was already swapped. Yeah, because they only came with a single jingle, right?
Yeah, because the B16A came in the SIR EGs, right?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. I see. I know some stuff. I'm
Yeah, you
okay.
do. Yeah, it's
I'm
good.
okay. I may not have any Honda books up here, but keep it keep it in there. Okay.
Yeah, so that was my intro, like just little bolt-ons and shit. I wouldn't say I got into this stuff more seriously until I bought that that LS powered S14.
Okay, the LS powered S14. Okay, and that was the one on the left side, right?
That's right.
I gotta ask this question. I know it's probably something a little off topic, but that red one that was beside you,
Oh yeah.
is that yours as well?
Yes. So yeah, that one that's got 3 in it, that I own at the same time, I was just about to sell. I didn't have the black one for very long when I had all 3. The red one, it was too nice to track. That was the problem, like, it was a great find.
Where'd you find it, if you don't mind me asking?
It was actually from the GTA.
If this is the car that I was gonna buy,
Maybe.
that is just too serendipitous in terms of
Okay.
coincidence.
It
Because
was
I
red, yeah.
literally saw a car exactly like that, and it had the guy was selling it back in six. Is that when you got it?
Ooh, maybe no, I would have bought it like 708.
Okay, it would have been it could have been 0708 because he could have kept it until then because it only had like 50 something thousand kilometers on it at the time. Actually, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mile.
yeah,
It
yeah,
yeah, it was an American car. So
yeah.
before the guy in the GTA, Pierre Paul, I remember his name. He was this, I think he was Dutch. Yeah, I think. Anyway, yeah, it was an American car, 40 some thousand miles. I sold it with 50, but I couldn't justify tracking it. It was just,
It's so
it was
clean.
so clean.
It's
And
so
now it's
clean.
back in the hands of an owner. You'll probably see it around the GTA, but he LS swapped it. Yeah, I
No,
like it.
I don't mind people doing it. It's just, and I know it's the most affordable thing these days. I
Yeah.
miss the affordability of being able to get an SR20 because people wanted to build a Sylvia. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to a guy who has an LS S14, but to me, that car should have stayed true to its roots, like some Nissan engine, an S14, SR20, probably.
yeah, or an S15, either one. Yeah,
Yeah, but great to see. I mean, it's still in pristine shape, and
that's good.
I follow him on Instagram. I get to see it every now and then, but that's definitely a car I kick myself for selling.
You miss it?
Oh yeah, like I'll never. It was clean, and so like the black one we were talking about here. It's just a shame because I only bought it because I'm kicking myself for the other one, and I'm thinking I'll never find one cleaner, so I might as well put in the time. And now I don't need to. Now I got a GT.
Isn't that but
Yeah, a bit aggressive. I mean, ideally, I would have liked to have sold this car first, and now I just feel married to it until I fix all the metalwork. But yeah, it was. I mean, it was then or never. Like if the cost of them keeps climbing, I'm sure that it'll plateau. But I don't think they'll
yeah.
lose too much value.
The question is when.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's a conversation you and I have had over text for quite a bit of time. That's something we can jump into, but we should try to still stick with your up and coming business. So I guess this is when you knew you wanted to work on JDM cars a lot of the time, and when you had your
Yeah, I took an affinity to the S14, built the race car, had the red one, sold the black one, moved here. I think that was a pivotal moment as far as expounding on my abilities and passions. And
okay,
so, yeah, it started just like I said, like after hour side jobs, little weld repairs and build this, build that. And, I remember like hating doing my initial exhausts. It took so long and I was doing it all wrong and the wrong process and wrong approach and everything. And you just get better at it. But I think I really cut my teeth on those repair type things because they're tough. When you're welding with nice clean metal in a shop, a job shop or something like that, those are relatively easy jobs. You got drawings, you know what the material is, you know which filler rod to choose. But when someone brings you a repair, you've got to like backwards build that part in your mind, like, well, what filler is that and this and that. So you have to know metallurgy and so having the shop really and having those courses under my belt and doing all those repairs, it just kind of grew and I eventually stopped wrenching. I used to wrench on the side back when, I was working on the race team and stuff and just break jobs and things like that. When I lived in town, if my garage door was open, it's like the neighbors knew I was open or something. And kept me too busy, to be honest. And so it was a nice transition to do something that it was a shift in that passion, that after hours thing. And like I said, having the 9 to 5 helped too, because I was able to fund buying up the necessary equipment. I mean, it would be tough to come up with the disposable income these days right now to buy a $6,000 tube bender or a, $7,000 welder setup. So I'm glad I did that stuff then while I was making decent money. And yeah, like I said, life just seemed to push me in that direction after that. And as I also told you, like 3 to 5 years after any one of these jobs, these 9 to 5s, I just kind of felt unsatisfied in some way. I wouldn't even say that's something I can explain or that's tangible necessarily. Um, something was missing, and that was the point. Yeah, like I said, I was late to the game, but I just think if it's kind of like I often attribute my work to a Japanese philosophy, the ikigo. We talked about this. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it 100%, but if you operate within your strengths, like I said, that's my key phrase. I say it all the time. And what you're passionate about, success is imminent. It's yeah, you just like I said, it's just releasing your mind of the fear of failure and disappointment. Yeah, I operate that way. I like having my time to do things nicely. I don't like being rushed, and I think that's why it's kind of such a niche thing.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? TIG welding does require a lot of patience and a lot of prep. Like they say, it's 90% prep and 10% welding, right? So it really suits me. I'd like if you've seen my shop, I guess, in pictures and videos, like I'm pretty particular about certain things. And maybe not in others. I'm a bit of an anomaly in that way, but in the shop, like, there's a way or it's the wrong way.
Well, I think that every shop owner has a unique idiosyncrasy to themselves in
Yeah,
regards to
fair.
how they do their work, and I think
Yeah,
that's also what makes you stand out, right?
right.
And that's partially one of the reasons why so many people that I knew or know, as well as the mutual friend of ours, or knows you and selected you to do the work for him, because I bet your name has actually come up as I've talked more in the car community. People know about you and they know that you do good work. And
Good.
I
That's
think
good.
that
Thank you.
obviously, as you said, you have a specific way of doing things. I think that speaks to it, and it's the type and quality of work that's coming out with why people are speaking about it, right? So what
It's a
kind
good
of
compliment, man.
jobs do you enjoy the most then in, for your business?
Probably exhausts because that's what I feel I do best now. Like contrary to what I was just saying in my example at the beginning, I'm pretty good at it now. I know how to do it fairly quickly as well. And just like we were talking about speaking on podcasts, it's something that comes with time.
Hmm.
Of course, fun to do jobs. I will say maybe option B would be the jobs that are like venturing into some territory that you're learning because that's interesting too. But, from a business perspective, I have to operate within my strengths. I can't just have philanthropic jobs all the time where I'm having fun and learning because at the end of the day, you got to pay the bills. So
Very
I
true.
try and have a good combination of the two, I guess, where you're still enjoying your work and learning and expounding on your skill set.
That makes sense because yeah, you obviously do have a bottom line that you have to always meet, but of course you want to do things to also increase your skill set and make you more comfortable with doing other
That's
types of
right.
jobs.
Yeah,
I'm guessing
I'm far from pro. I don't wanna give the wrong impression.
I
You're
doubt
right.
that, man. Your work is professional.
Well,
It does have it has professional quality. I think that you're trying to, and it's not. I've always could tell that you're a very humble guy. I think that you are trying to always evolve to different levels of professional quality,
yeah.
and that's your integrity speaking in itself.
Thanks, man. I would say part of that world was opened up in my eyes due to Instagram. Like, we were talking about this when we talked a couple weeks ago. I'm at the age where using socials in the way that I do sometimes feels a little strange and unnatural, but it's also been a huge tool for motivating myself to do better. I might be really good at these things here, but I'm looking at these guys that are really, really good at yeah, steel tubular welding and stainless steel exhaust, but also Inconel and titanium and holy smokes, like welding it so it looks like a robot did it. And that was freehand. And you're like, that's mind blowing to me. Like, so there's always room for improvement. And I'm probably hard on myself sometimes. And I think that Instagram has that effect on people, young adults, especially who are really impressionable and like, self image and all that kind of stuff. I think it's important to know that those are real people too. They make mistakes. They're probably just not posting them. You know what I'm saying?
Trust me, social media is a serious double-edged sword and that's what I get from what you're saying.
Mm,
As much as it can inspire you, it can also have the effect of sometimes bringing you down.
yeah,
And even for a professional like yourself, I can understand because you're probably not only seeing just people's builds, but you're looking at the shops that are doing those builds and wanting to achieve that level of quality or that level of success. And I think we said this offline at one point that you always got to keep in mind that comparison is a thief of joy.
hmm,
So when you keep that in mind, it kind of resets yourself to remember that, you're not in any competition really, but with yourself. Yeah,
that's
obviously
right.
for the reality of things, if you objectively look at it, there are other businesses, but if you keep focusing on just, bettering yourself, bettering your craft, and of course, always considering other just formal parts of the business, marketability and stuff like that, the business will come, the success will come. It's just keep trying to level up yourself. And I think you're doing it, man. I honestly do. I think you're doing it. I think as I said, you're well known probably beyond what you actually know through people
Great to hear.
in the
That's a
car
big
scene.
compliment. Yeah,
So,
thanks, man.
and I only hope that, even with us talking now, it can give people more insight to the person behind the welding machine, the person behind working on their car,
Yeah.
to understand that, you're not only just doing it from a business perspective, you're doing it because you enjoy it and you want, as you said to me when we talked about my 32 GTR, there's a passion that you have that you just want to put these things on the road and see them drive and see them working well. So I think that's awesome, and I think we need more people in the industry that are conducting businesses like yourself, actually having the passion for it and not just seeing the dollar signs.
Hmm, hmm.
Is there any crazy or challenging builds that stand out to you that come to mind? Because honestly, the only thing when you mentioned before, like you do like doing exhaust, I thought, hey, I wonder if when you worked on our mutual friends 34, was that challenging? Was that something that you've done before, or it was new and you were trying to attain some new skills?
So that car definitely is one of the first cars that comes to mind. But when I think about it a little bit more, that's not because of the intimidating element of the work. I think it was because I started realizing that while I'm attracting high value cars as well. So, it's just you have to be so careful all the time and make sure you account for the extra time and care. Big compliment, by the way, from Kevin. Shout out Kevin. He was a great customer to deal with, by the way, but he used the term white gloves about my service at White Pine. And that was a big pat on the back. It's obviously it takes a certain person to realize that too, though, like some people don't even notice that you're doing these extra things. And yeah, Kevin definitely did. And it was a great experience. First set of strut tops, but again, the welding part didn't phase me. It wasn't a fear of the actual work because I think a lot of that was because I cut my teeth on those repair type jobs where you got to deal with rust and you got to deal with primer and like seam sealer and you got to somehow try and still weld this metal together that's like, on fire, essentially where this stuff's burning. So yeah, but it was an enjoyable job. Basically anything it's got some technical complexities, you gotta scratch the old head a little bit. It's a tight workspace or there's extreme temperatures or, they're all the unique challenges. And that's the fun part of custom. There's a couple things that aren't so fun, but that is the fun part. But yeah, I'd say Kevin's car and a few cars like that, race cars.
Like that's pretty that's cool. Like I honestly did I thought you were actually gonna say nah, Kevin's car was easy, but
It
I guess
kind of was. Yeah.
okay. All
I
right, that's
mean, well, like I said, it wasn't the complexity of the job. It was just dealing with like,
nuance.
a higher value car in the shop
Yeah,
and
yeah.
extra care there. But so that was the challenge, right?
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm
Yeah.
sure the fact that you've probably seen this 34 and you're like, holy shit, this thing's probably gaining value while it's just sitting here in my shop.
I'd like to think I helped it along the way. Yeah.
You definitely did. You definitely
Hopefully.
did.
Yeah. It's a thing. It'd be good to be known for that. So, I got a good system down. Of course, being the first job I did for Kevin, I gave some time away, but I didn't mind because I figured there'd more there'd be more to follow, you know?
I think there will be because that car is actually pretty known now, and he's been very open about the work that's been
Yeah,
done with
yeah.
the car.
It's
So
awesome.
that's definitely will be. Do you find any difference between working on Japanese cars versus any other imports like Euros or domestics?
It's a funny thing. It makes me think of both sides of that. Like I sometimes enjoy working on a Japanese car, but even Nissan, oh, they're such a pain in the butt sometimes, you know, just how tight everything is with the RBs or just things in weird places that make it hard to work on. Um, you know, some manufacturers have that figured out better than others, and especially by now. For example, the BRZs and the FRSs, like I swear to God, a 10, a 12, and a 14 mil socket, you can take 99% of the car apart. And it's there's a lot of room, and so they're more enjoyable. But
It's funny you
you
say
know,
that
they're
because that literal phrase that you said, the 10 to 12 and the 14 mil socket,
yeah,
I've heard been used on majority of Japanese cars, whether it's
yeah,
the Nissans or even like I've even heard a guy with a Mazda RX-7 say the same thing. He's like 10, 12,
okay,
14.
yeah, I believe it.
It pretty much works on every car.
Yeah. I mean, I have a special place in my heart for the 90s Nissans, you know, um, and that I guess comes with the territory, you know, the those painful idioms about pulling an engine or having to do so much extra work for some simple task. I'm used to it by now, and I guess it's part of the nostalgia, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. So I wanted to get the aware of your time as well as get some thoughts that you have. Let's actually talk about your I guess your biggest personal car, and then we'll move to another topic about the car scene and the culture. So you did mention already, which um, I I'm actually falling in love with your car, man. Your personal Nissan Skyline GTR 33. What's the story behind that?
I originally wanted a 34. The price just went out of touch for me. And I figured it was my last chance to have a GTR. And as a matter of fact, somewhere along the lines in that process, I ended up falling in love with the 33 even more. And I think that's because my background is the S14 and how similar the 33 looks with the S14 Zenki. And yeah, at the time it was COVID, so you know, not much in Canada to pick from. Yeah, I started shopping in the States, and so I rented a car, went and saw 6 of them, and this one definitely stood out. It was a little more complete actually than I wanted. I wanted to build a race car. I wanted to experience all-wheel drive on the track, and this car was just well put together. And the owner was out of AutoWorks in Boston. Shout out to him. He had a wicked shop. There's all kinds of cool stuff there, and you know I was pretty impressed. So I figured, well, if you're gonna buy this type of car from someone, you're gonna buy it from someone like this. You know, I'm looking at like 2,500 horsepower Hennessy Vipers and 2,000 horsepower Audi R8s and Ferrari and a Grand National and another GTR in the back. You're like, holy smokes. So we made a deal and I came back for it with the trailer and that was quite the experience bringing it home. Bit painful at the border, but you know, we got it done and, I've had it almost 3 years now. Yeah, it's an awesome car. If I was going to buy a 33, it was going to be the midnight purple and I just had to have it.
Yeah, honestly, man, it's a beautiful car.
Thank you, man.
It
Yeah.
it is a beautiful car. Like, yeah, even just looking at the rear of this car, your car right now, it's just like I'll be honest with you. Back in the day when I first started getting into Skylines, I didn't hate the 33, but it didn't stand out to me, especially because the rear end was it looked very much different than the in terms of the sharp edges than the 34 or the 32. But as I told you with the story that I found 2 of them myself in Brampton one time. Like I when I could see them in person, I fell in love with them too, man. I could understand why the
Yeah.
allure was just probably you were gobstopped and you're just like, you know what,
Yeah.
this thing will work. It'll
Yeah.
and I agree with you as well with the whole 34 thing because like any reasonable person can't really afford any one of those anymore. So why not? Same engine,
Exactly.
pretty much the same car. and
pretty
especially
much.
with the 33, it's that much closer in terms of how it was built to the 34 than the 32 was.
Yeah, great machine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it really is a good looking car, bro. Honestly, what's been your favorite upgrades on your car so far?
Was pretty happy with the work that I did in the fall there before we went on the cruise with a bunch of the shop group guys and some other GTRs and JDM cars. I gave myself a bit of a fire under my ass to get this work done, I guess. And it started with just a couple little things, and I ended up doing a bunch of work. So that was like the most productive say round of work that I've done on that car. I'm still actually working through some stuff. I don't want to say I'm disappointed in the whole purchase or nothing, but no, I got to take ownership for that too. Was because when I saw it, I could have looked a little deeper. Some of the things I knew about big, like I was saying about this black car behind me, I'm big on the interior. Got little things and bits and pieces of plastics that were broken, but the GTR tax is pretty real. You can't do that all in one shot, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the exhaust was really nice to finish that, and some of the powder coating and getting the car's coatings and surfaces kind of restored slowly. Um, the next thing I noticed you were curious about was the plans for it going forward, and I hoped to get a transmission in it. Actually, this one's been kind of acting up in fourth gear. Yeah, I think it's a synchro or a shift fork or something. So I got a brand new Nissan Heritage trans in the box for that, and some turbos and all some stuff that came along with the car that he never got to installing. And I think it would be great to get that car around 600 wheel, but there's all those domino effects. So I'm slowly collecting the parts for that. But yeah, my goal this year is just to get it drivable, and I'll probably push the turbos off for another year or so.
No, that's perfectly fine. Honestly, I agreed 100% with everything you just said. GTR tax is 100% real, and
Unfortunately,
not only in regards to performance parts or any parts whatsoever. I've already let you listeners know my pain in regards to wanting to get an N1 style lip for the rear
oh yeah,
trunk of my car, or an
okay,
N1 style lip on the front on the hood. And for whatever reason, even though the length in for each part is completely different, they are still both $1,000. So I can only imagine all the costs
yeah,
for even 33 parts, because I know stuff is being discontinued for my car.
yeah.
I can only imagine if there's certain things that you're wishing to get for the 33, and you're just like, yeah, like,
Thank God for the Japanese sites, with the original Nissan parts fiche breakdown. They've come in clutch for me for sure.
yeah, no, no, hands down, hands down. But yeah, no, I actually, my question is, and I've never been in a 33. I've been a
We'll have to change
34.
that. Okay.
Hopefully, you can help me with that one.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, you've driven, I'm guessing, the 32, 33, and 34,
I've been
at
in a
least a little bit.
32. I haven't driven a 32. I've been in one.
Okay.
Yeah, and
What is
34.
what does the car feel like to drive? And I guess, do you find a difference between the generation?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the 32 because it's lighter, it just feels more nimble. But it's hard to compare for me. Like I wouldn't say I'm that experienced with the GTR, say as much as an S14, but and all these cars were modified too. But I mean, generally, yeah, I think the weight of the car is noticeable in the car, and even the sound, in the cabin and whatnot.
Hmm.
33 is pretty heavy, I'm not gonna lie. It's the longest wheelbase out of all three, and you can feel it, and quite frankly, out of the box, the car doesn't handle that well. So, and I think that's where the big money comes in, especially for a guy like me. Like, I take a corner and okay, that's pretty exhilarating, but it could be a whole lot more exhilarating. So
That's fair.
it needs some IKEA arms and stuff, and get that geometry so the car doesn't push. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest inherent issues of the GT.
Well, yeah, they're understeer because they're very front heavy. So that's usually the biggest one of the biggest issues. I personally, because I've owned a S14 just like yourself, a Zenki, and I've had my 240, my regular 90 model, and then I had a Z33, and I found the S14 and the Z33 kind of shared a similarity in terms of like it's heavier, it's bulkier, but at the same time, I don't know why, and maybe you'd be able to share if you have a similar experience. I feel more safe when I'm putting the power down on like the heavier cars than in terms of like the 32, where I'm like, if I if I twitch the wheel just the wrong way, it could be a bad end.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like that with the difference between like the older generations compared to the newer ones. I like the heftiness of like the 33 and the Z33 and the S14. I like the taller dash. There's an appeal and the driving feels different. I don't know if you can attest to that.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting point you made about the taller dash. I think chassis rigidity or stiffness, if you will, is something that I would pick up on. And I mean, you're right. Like if you picture back to like the Datsuns and stuff, there's a lot of rubber in those cars. You know, they're still really just getting the hang of a unibody car, I think. So yeah, like a lightweight car probably, you know, in an OEM form doesn't have that stiffness, but that's where, you know, the cage or the bolt-ons come in, and then it's a real weapon, right? You get rid of some of that flex when you're going around a corner and get the suspension dialed in so nothing wonky is happening halfway through a corner, you know?
Mm.
It's uh it's always a fun thing to like to try and improve those inherent weaknesses from the factory.
Would you, given the fact that you are the fabricator, would you recommend putting like a cage in like a GTR or like a half cage or a full cage, or like what would you usually recommend, even from a person who's looking to track the car, who's sometimes tracking the car, or just streeting the car?
Yeah, I think that's the question is like the intents for the car. But let's say, yeah, if it's an occasional track car, a roll cage is pretty aggressive, like maybe a roll bar, you know, something, even if it's bolted in, although obviously that's not as safe, that's definitely going to help with the rigidity of the car. But there are other things people could argue, you know, I see some guys, sorry, overseas, Steve at SR Auto Stores doing things like bracing underneath the car. Yeah, I would love to know how that affects the car. I personally have never done anything like that, but yeah, anything like that. I guess the question really comes down to what's the application and the intended use. If they're going to be on the street, a cage is not something you want to be dealing with. So like, you know, maybe some strut bars or stuff like that would be good, or some spherical bearings, or getting rid of some of that unnecessary compliance and all the rubber, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That sounds fair, man. Well, if you guys do need to consult anybody, consult please, Jesse, if you need to some you have questions on what you should do depending on your build, because you need to talk to the professionals to get a better understanding. You don't want to just jump into something that you don't really need. It's
Yeah.
especially with the prices of modifying cars these days.
Uh-huh.
Put the money where you need it most.
That's right.
So I wanted to pivot to one last thing before we wrap up here, and it's the JDM culture and just car culture and experience portion of our podcast. We'll talk about car culture in general, but obviously you have a lot of Japanese cars behind you. What do you think? What's your thoughts on the scene nowadays, Canada versus the US? And if you have any input, if obviously we have social media, so you obviously see what's going on in Japan too. Um, what do you what is your what do you see about the car scene, about what is going on and where it's headed, and what would you like to see it go to?
Well, I guess I'll start with here. You know, there's some elements that are, say, disappointing. You know, I think how a lot of people are behaving and using cars to do things like takeovers, and just that whole behavior or mentality in general is really hurting the entire car scene, because people that don't know cars or know those subcultures or age groups, they don't know that that's any different than some otherwise law abiding car enthusiast. And so we all get from these non knowing people, we all get put in the same pot. You know, we're all painted the same color. And I think that's dangerous for the rest of us who, yeah, I'm not saying I've never done anything stupid, but who have matured or have better sensibility to use their car as a battering ram or something, like in stealing cars to do this. Like, anyway, the behavior is really strange to me. I think that's a different generation than we are, of course. But what I'd like to see is, these cars are the cars that we're hanging on to. They're not going anywhere. For the most part. Yeah, some might be getting, used on the track and whatnot and enjoyed. And that's respectable too. But even with the EV thing, I think as far as I'm alive, I have sort of a comfort in knowing that the cars from our generations are not going anywhere. So nor will those types of people that appreciate them, and thus like the behavior, like that different culture than what we're experiencing with some of these younger generations. So yeah, I see good, I see bad. I don't think they're going to take our keys away from us. Maybe one day, if you own an ICE engine car, if that's your mode of transportation, they can't tell you you can't go and get groceries. Right? A change of ownership may not be possible after a certain date. But I think we're still pretty far from that. So yeah, I think we can hang on to our glory for a little bit longer, man.
Okay. No, that's
Yeah.
fair. That's fair.
And well, you mentioned Japan too. I guess I didn't really touch. Japan's always in my mind. I refer to them in business and craft and workmanship. They're a bit of an example of setter, I would say. They're very disciplined people and very, they have a lot of respect for others. I was surprised to hear that you said they're having troubles with some of the similar things that we are here in North America. But I'd still say overall, like more of a respected community, especially in proof is that, their governments sponsor these events where tuner cars can come and meet and even drive and do stupid shit, pop bangs and drifting. Even like the governments are sponsoring these events, and the police are there. And so that's support. I think if, that's just like the parenting the child in a smarter way than say here, it's not, it's misunderstood and you get kids that act out. But I'd like to see something more like they have there, to be honest. Even still, that it's not perfect, but I think they're doing better than we are.
I would agree. I think our first of all, I think as you kind of mentioned earlier, I think our car culture is synoptic very much with the states. It's just the states has a larger, obviously, population, so they do it in way bigger numbers than we do. So I don't think there's too much difference between us and them.
Look what happened in GAT last year. Like
Yeah.
I mean, that's a prime example of like why did those people have to ruin it for everybody? It's been going on for years now. There's never been a problem, and then all of a sudden, it's really sad. So it's frustrating. I don't know how to necessarily, what I could recommend for that situation. It's the way the culture is heading. I don't know if you can change that trajectory, but
Well,
unfortunate.
it's the people in the culture that can change the trajectory, right? It's
I hope so.
the ones that handle things better in the majority, being the majority, than the ones that don't. And that's the only thing that we can really control, right? But I would agree that, yes, I would like to see things a little bit more, as I said, as I used the descriptor before, synoptic with what Japanese car culture is in Japan. The only thing is the culture itself is shrinking. It's kind of resurging a little bit, but it's still shrunken compared
In Japan,
to,
yeah,
yes, just like ours. Ours is shrunken as well compared to what the car community was back in the day, because things have just become a lot more expensive. People have grown up. Other interests have taken hold for other people. So then the cars are seen more of as a mode of transportation. And then I would be dishonest to say that gas prices nowadays probably do play into it too.
there, yeah, good point. This is a new thing for sure.
So when
Well,
we were driving first with our cars, our S14s, I remember we could get gas at like 70 cents a liter.
yeah, man.
It was good times. We didn't actually
Oh
really think
yeah,
about it,
yeah.
but
You
there's
could
been a
joyride back in those days. You would burn gas.
now you got to think about, okay, I'm gonna make this here, got to make this trip here, I got to
Yeah,
at least save it for at least a few days, because I don't want to fill up right at that
story of
date.
my life, man. Story of my life.
But I want to make sure the pays coming in on that day, so I can
That's
afford the
right.
gas. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big change
Don't you
compared.
feel though, like, do you have the same opinion that some of these newer car culture, this takeover type, is giving car culture a bad rep in general? Do you think that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I completely agree. It's the truth. It's just human that most people will unfortunately judge people on a on a blanket kind of
Yeah.
purview. They don't look at it contextually to see what is actually happening and who are the disruptors. So when they see a modified car that's doing silly things and hitting people, they're just going to lump us in that same category, unfortunately. I do see that takeovers are happening a little less. Well, with the Gattenberg thing, that was surprising to even have that to happen, given the fact of what has been happening with those scenes. So for the fact that happened is just, yeah, you can't, unfortunately, you can't stop stupid sometimes. That's the more simple way
Yeah,
of putting it.
unfortunately.
But I also see that I see the other side of things, and I see other parts of the car culture trying to be put a hard stop on that and be a more illuminating example of what car culture can be
I
by
like the big
hand.
brother stepping in. Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Like, for
okay.
example, the morning meets event that I went to last year that I had mentioned to you, where I got to meet a whole bunch of people, talk to people. People were giving me taxi drives in their Porsches, their GT3s, their Testarossas and stuff like that, where I never even think I'd get the opportunity to actually
Yeah,
ride along people in cars
sick.
like these. But having a mature demeanor of,
Yeah,
like, we're everyday folks. We're all trying to make money here. We're just enjoying a hobby that we're very passionate about, and we're doing it in the right areas. As opposed to back in the day, and I'm sure you know of this, when we used to just all meet up at Highway 7 in Martin Grove, Tim Hortons over there in Woodbridge, and then meet up there, have a coffee, and then go to the runs. But even those were held in like an industrial area. It wasn't done in like the public. I've seen people do stupid things in Young and
yeah,
Dundas Square,
yeah,
right central downtown. So yeah, in my opinion, like, as I said, it is a double-edged sword, car culture, but anything is. It's just how we handle ourselves in the
yeah.
public. And if we can show that we enjoy this hobby passionately but respectably, I think it still exists. And I think that, it can still flourish, especially with the push to have more people enjoy their cars on the track nowadays than anything, and having those meets centered at like track areas, so that
Yeah.
it doesn't disturb any communities. No one can really say anything, and if you really want to go and push your car, that's the place to do it, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's how I see the scene as it stands
That's
right
good.
now. I'm very
That's
much
positive.
in
Yeah.
line with you.
Yeah, cool. Positive.
So I think just in the interest of time, I think we're gonna wrap up here. But I did want to ask you, did you have any advice for beginners right now that are trying to get into the car community? And by advice, for example, what kind of car do you think would be a good starter car? You obviously work on one of the cars that I believe is a starter car on a regular basis, but I think there's very limited options out there that we had in our younger days, in our formulative days. So, is there any advice you have for younger people that are trying to become a car enthusiast, get into car culture, or even with purchasing right-hand drive cars? Is there any advice you have for that too?
Yeah, that's not as big of a deal as it used to be, unfortunately, importing JDM cars. But the advice that I would give, when it comes to building a car, like just have an intent, be intentional about it, and try and get to an end goal. And especially if it's a track car, you'll hear people say it's nothing new, but seat time is better than the mods. And you're out there and you're spending money on seat time and probably getting more out of the car than spending all this money on modifications and things. So I built the car because I wanted to build the car. I didn't build the car to be in a certain class or something. So it really depends on who you're talking to. Also, and like a good bit of advice I would give anybody for things even non-car related, if you just bought a house and you want to renovate it, it's probably best you don't tear the whole house apart. So, you take it one room at a time and you pace yourself, because it can get overwhelming. And you see a lot of projects that never get finished because the people bite off a little more than they could chew. So yeah, my advice would be just, if you're intentional about what that long-term goal is, work your way toward that slowly, chip away at it, in a intelligent way, I guess.
Would you be able to expand on that in terms of people trying to get into welding as well?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I guess we could agree. Like my experience was set in the right direction in my belief because of taking those courses at Seneca. Consider that an endorsement for Seneca Welding College. Because, like I said, you can learn anybody can pick up a welder. It's like a glue gun, and you can probably stick something together. But understanding like a little bit about metallurgy and what the flux is on the rod and the composition of the rod and what the rod numbers mean, and like that's all really important. So like I say, that's like the fundamentals, the rudiments of anything, and I think it's really good for someone to start with that. That should be your foundation. And then also, yeah, crawl, walk, run. Don't get into too much at once and get yourself overwhelmed. Have fun with it, play with it. Go on marketplace and buy a cheap welder and do that job that you've been talking about, because there ain't nothing to it but to do it.
That
Yeah.
I think you should. I think you should patent that phrase. Put it as your mission
No,
statement
it's been
under White
said.
Pine
It's been
Welding.
said.
Ain't
Yeah,
nothing to it but to do it. Actually, that
that's right.
we're gonna figure that out. No one take that. That's Jesse's. Okay.
Oh no, it's definitely taken. That I'm definitely not the first to say that. It's just something that I really live by for
No,
sure.
it's a good mission. It's a good principle to live by. To be honest with you, I actually probably will be telling myself that more or less nowadays. And so, where can people find your work? Where can people reach out and see what you can do and what you're doing and what you could do for them?
I think probably the best way is my Instagram account. I kind of use it as a digital business card so people can see what we do in the shop, the variety of the cars, the variety of the work, the type of work, the different types of welding, different fabrication projects. And there's also ways to navigate to some of the products that I sell as well, because we're not just doing custom, we're also doing small batch of very specific products. So yeah, you can find me at White Pine Welding on Instagram.
All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'll definitely put that. If you guys are looking to catch that, White Pine Welding on Instagram, and I'll also put it in the notes on YouTube and Spotify. Do you have any final
Excellent.
messages to the car community or the community in
Well,
general?
just get out there and drive, fix your cars. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Sometimes you just gotta just tell yourself, like pick yourself up and I'm gonna do this right now and pick up the wrench and just make that first step, because that's how you determine the second and the third. So I appreciate you having me on, man. It's an honor. I like what you're doing for the community and exposing these guys who are otherwise just up in their little shop in this small town in Angus, and you're definitely bringing a light to a great thing in the community and the culture. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you, man. Thank you. It's been a pleasure and a privilege actually just speaking with you, and I've learned a lot speaking to you offline and online right now. Honestly, thank you really and truly for taking the time out to come on my meager little podcast to you know spread the word of what White Pine Welding is about and what we are looking to do as a mission to improve the car community. Appreciate
That's
that.
it, man. Amen.
Well,
Amen. Thank you.
thank you. Well, thank you, listeners, as well, for listening to another episode of Real One Garage. Again, our main mission is to keep it real and keep it relatable. Keep it all relatable in terms of the automotive content here. Till next time, peace out.
See you guys.